call it to order. Cheryl, is your reboot done?
Yes, we're all good.
Oh, good. I hate automatic reboots. Could you call the roll, please?
Yes. Chair Eakins?
Here.
Vice Chair Convery?
Here.
Commissioner James?
Here, I'll be logging out early.
Commissioner McCatton?
Here.
Commissioner
I haven't heard anything, so I'm imagining that she's on her way. Although last meeting, she told people to tune in at 6, so hopefully she's remembered 5. And we're very happy to have Mayor Sticks as our liaison again this month. Are you on a quarter or a monthly or?
Quarter, yeah.
Oh, sweet.
Quarter.
Great
Yeah.
quarter.
It's my total pleasure. Thank you for all the beautiful work you're doing. It's exciting.
We like it. And we brought the big dog. Matt Summers is joining us remotely. So we have some questions for Matt. At this time, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I think James will have has a flag there for us. If you stand with me. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation, under God,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all. I gotta adjust that camera not to get my.
Hi there, Jenny's here. Sorry. Hi there.
Hello.
Okay, public communications. Last Friday, Lucas sent out, was it sent via mail or by email? Lucas?
Yeah, notification was sent out last Friday regarding item 2.
Okay, was it sent out as a mailed item, snail mail?
Yes, but I would hold off on notification till we come to that specific item. This is just general public communication.
Oh, okay. So
for members, yeah, that would be for members that have questions or comments on items not on tonight's agenda.
Thank you very much. And then we have 2 other public comments that are specifically related to that. So we'll talk about that then.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay. Do we have any other public communications other than those for item number 2? Cheryl, do you know?
I do see one raised hand. If anyone else would like to speak during public comments, please use the raise hand function.
Yeah, I see 2 raised hands.
I see 2 raised hands now. So first, I'll bring in Don Teedy.
Okay.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Hello, Don. Yes.
Hi. I don't know why I don't see video on this end, but
well, we're not seeing video on your end, so it's equal.
Yeah. Okay. I'll just go ahead with my comments. I wanted to say that on behalf of myself and Ojai historians Craig Walker and Elise DePoit, we would like to provide clarification on 2 matters discussed during the February 28th special meeting of the HPC, specifically the Secretary of Interior Standards and the historicity of Hotel El Roblar. Firstly, the Secretary of Interior Standards. These are standards. Statements were made during the meeting that these standards are not law, but just guidelines, implying that they need not be followed. Secretary of the Interior Standards for the treatment of historic properties are law codified but in the federal regulations under 36 CFR 68. There are 4 treatment standards: preservation, rehabilitation, restoration, and reconstruction. Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation are codified in federal regulations under 36 CFR 67. There are related but separate guidelines for the standards that illustrate the practical application of the treatment standards. It is these separate guidelines that are advisory. The standards themselves stand alone as standards and are codified in the law. Compliance with the standards is required for local, state, and federal historic preservation tax incentive programs. Secretary of Interior standards are more than just, quote, a good measuring tool, unquote. These are professional standards for historic preservation. Just like there are building standards and a medical standard of care in healthcare that you expect professionals to follow, the Secretary of Interior standards are the professional industry standard for historic preservation. They are adopted on the national level and by the state of California to prevent a substantial adverse change to a historical resource under CEQA. One would expect historic preservationists to follow these standards. The basic philosophy of the standards is to do the least amount of harm to a historical resource. Proposed work should preserve the character and integrity of the irreplaceable resource. The City of Ojai has adopted these standards in Ojai Historic Preservation Law outlined in Title IV, Chapter 8 of the Municipal Code. Excellent training on the Secretary of Interior standards is available on the California Office of Historic Preservation e-learning website. Secondly, on the matter of Hotel El Roblar, statements were made in the February 28th meeting that there is nothing left of the building that's historic. If this statement were true, proposed alterations to Hotel El Roblar would not have come before you. In 2018, Hotel El Roblar, with all of its existing alterations, were assessed by professional architectural historians at GPA Consulting, who determined that, quote, despite these alterations, its overall form and many of its original and historic features have not been significantly altered. The building retains sufficient integrity to contribute to the downtown Ojai district. The finding was reviewed and approved by Caltrans, and State of Office of Historic Preservation concurred. As a contributing resource to downtown Ojai Historic District and in its current state, alterations and all, Hotel El Roblar is listed on the California Register of Historical Resources, is eligible for listing on the National Register of Historical Resource, is a, quote, historical resource under state law. It is historical. This information would be considered significant new finding under CEQA, California's environmental state law. Therefore, decisions made in 2003 by the HPC are irrelevant as they predate this information. Personal opinions on proposed design aesthetics should also be irrelevant, and the ability to remove proposed alterations in the future should not excuse following historic preservation standards now. Proposed work on a historic resource should follow Secretary of Interior standards to preserve the character and historic integrity of the resource. And in the case of Hotel El Roblar, proposed work on the historic resource should follow the Secretary of Interior standards to preserve the character and historic integrity of the state designated downtown Ojai Historic District and the district's other contributing resource. As stated during the last meeting, the decision on Hotel El Roblar sets a precedent moving forward for a proposed local downtown Ojai district and the future treatment of its contributing resources. Deferring to the development and not choosing to follow professional standards and professional expert opinion is, in our opinion, harmful to the significance and the integrity of Ojai's historical resources and its historic downtown. Property owners in the local Ojai Historic District need clear, simple expectations. What professional standards will be followed for the proposed local downtown district, if not the Secretary of Interior standards? Compliance with these standards is in fact required under the Ojai General Plan and Historic Preservation Law. Local, state, and federal historic preservation tax incentive programs also require adherence to these standards. Moving forward, we urge you to follow both the letter of the law and the spirit of the law for historic preservation. As stewards of Ojai's irreplaceable historical resources, we urge you to follow the Secretary of Interior standards. The future of Ojai's history is in your hands. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Don. Cheryl, do we have another speaker?
Okay, we have Elise Dupuis.
Okay. Elise, please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. Hello, good evening, everyone. In reading the ARG Historical Resource Report, I noticed a number of I guess you would call them things that needed correcting or some clarifications. And so I have prepared an addendum that I would like to submit to the HPC and to the city of Ojai. But I would like to, out of fairness, I would like to say that most of these issues stem from the resources that ARG used to write their report. In other words, the sources that they cite are the origins of most of these problems. So I'm not faulting them necessarily. It's just, this is a problem with history. Something gets written and it just passes along and passes along. And so I would like to tell you that I'm going to be submitting that. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Elise. Lucas, should that be sent to you?
Yeah, I would send it directly to me, Elise, if you could.
Okay, and then will that then be distributed back to the commissioners, or how will we get a copy of what Elise has submitted?
So I would need to see the information before.
Okay.
Yes.
And
Certainly.
generally,
I'm sorry.
any
Yes,
public comment submitted like that in writing is forwarded to the commissioners. The evaluation of the course will be at the staff level.
yes, yeah. I just wanted to be aware of what was submitted. Thank you. Okay, do we have any other speakers, Cheryl? Thank you, Elise.
I do not see any other raised hands.
Okay, great. Well, we will close public communication then.
Brian, I would like to respond to the public comments because I did, there were a few errors.
Excuse me, Commissioner.
I don't think
Commissioner Convery, if I may, unfortunately, under the confines of the Brown Act, we cannot respond to the public comments on items that are not on the agenda. So with that, we must let the comments lie.
Okay.
The matter would come up to a future meeting if the item returns to the HPC's agenda. For those who may be wondering, the El Roblar Hotel will come to the Planning Commission agenda at a future date for review and approval and possible decision.
Okay, Matt, can I ask you a question? When I've made public comments before to the city council, they like respond back to me. So was that not cool? Is that not happening anymore? I thought I could do it too.
On a matter which is sure to result in litigation, we should be in best practices. This is that. So I would recommend that we not respond.
Okay, yeah, I'm just wondering how come the city council gets to talk back to public comments? They don't anymore.
Again, it's in
Depends
part
on the
case by
comment.
case. It
Okay.
depends on the comment and the context. In this context, we're not responding to the questions.
Okay, done.
Thank you.
So all things aren't open to public litigation? All the comments from other people are never open to litigation? Just in this
It depends
case.
on the subject. Obviously, we're speaking hypothetically about the past regarding past comments. My comments tonight are about the comments we just heard, which are a matter that may result in litigation, which is a contested land use matter in which we will not be responding to.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. I say
Mayor Sticks?
we're not doing that anymore.
Oh, okay.
Cindy.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Great. Thank you all.
thanks.
Okay, we will move on to the museum representative report from Wendy. This is the last weekend for the Ojai Warming Show that has been very well received by the museum. If you haven't been yet, they're open Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then it will close. The next exhibit coming up is on three key items that are a part of the history of the Ojai Valley, as well as current items that are current groups that are working. And the three things that they're going to do is the tennis tournament. We know the tennis tournament I believe in April is back this year. The other thing, and these all go back to decades and decades ago when I believe it was just after the war when they resurged. The Ojai Tennis Tournament has been around for 100 years, I believe. The Ojai Valley Inn is the second item that this exhibit will be covering, and the music festival is the third one. Probably didn't realize the music festival had been around that long. So that is our museum report. Now we'd like to look at the consent items minutes for the February 10th, 2022 regular meeting. Does anybody have any insight or any changes, any suggestions? Not seeing or hearing anything. Would entertain a motion for approval of the minutes as stated?
I'll make a motion for approval
Great, thank
of the
you.
minutes.
Second?
I'll second it.
Okay, second by Gina. Cheryl, roll call, please.
Akins,
Yes.
Convery,
Godfrey was bouncing that around just a minute. Oh,
Sorry, maintenance showed up to get my computer out of the thing. Yes. I vote yes.
James,
Valerie,
Yes.
McCatton,
Yes.
Freeborn.
Yes.
Thank you.
great, thank you, everyone. Disclosure of site visits and ex parte contacts. I have nothing. Did anybody else go someplace or talk with somebody that we need to be aware of other than in a general fashion?
I don't have anything.
I don't have any, I don't have anything either.
Okay, I think we're good to go. Okay, discussion item number 2, proposed local downtown historic district ad hoc committee's progress report. Because this is an item on the agenda, it is open for discussion. Cheryl, do we have any public or first a staff report?
Yes, I was gonna say, let's go into the staff report first. And while it doesn't identify that here in the recommendation, certainly we want to open it up to the public, as this is really kind of a public discussion as a discussion item. So my name is Lucas Seibert, Community Development Director here with the City of Ojai. Myself and the City Attorney will be kind of opening up the discussion and dialogue. I believe City Attorney also has a brief PowerPoint presentation that he'd like to run through. Just to give a brief overview and kind of background to where to the February 10th meeting and then where we're at today. At the February 10th Historic Preservation Commission meeting, there was discussion, and from that discussion was born 2 ad hoc committees, and that's really kind of the focus for tonight. Hearing from those two committees, they include Chair Akins and Vice Chair Convery, kind of providing the public outreach, and then Commissioner Prebor and Commissioner McCatton providing the educational information documents, which will be discussed as well tonight. At that meeting, it was not provided, there was not notification provided, simply because the property labels had not been formally created. We have since created what we believe to be about 99% accurate. And that is also hinged on whether or not the boundaries of the district are in agreement with the commission. Hopefully tonight as a discussion piece. And we can certainly pull up that map to discuss it as well. Tonight, we're really kind of looking for an update and discussion from the ad hoc committee in terms of their progress regarding the tasks assigned. And I should mention that on March 4th, the Community Development Department did send out a notice to the property owners about this meeting. And the meetings that we have in the future will be also notified to those members and those property owners as well moving forward. So I wanted to make that known. And other than that, that is kind of where we're at currently. I know Matt, the city attorney, has a PowerPoint that he'd like to run through, which focuses on specific technicalities within our code.
Okay, Matt, is this a good time to transition to you?
Yes, if you don't mind.
I
Chair
don't
and
mind at all.
Commissioners, I want to take a couple of minutes to go over about 7 or 8 slides that should answer a number of the questions that have been sort of swirling around, so that we can have a more focused discussion. So if you'll bear with me on the technological side, I will share my screen and the slides. All right. Can you see those slides?
Yes.
Okay. So, proposed downtown Ojai Historic District, legal questions. For those who don't know me, I'm Ojai's contract city attorney. So, historic district process. What I want to cover tonight is the process for going from nomination at the Historic Preservation Commission review and recommendation, then City Council review and approval or not, as the council may desire for a proposed historic district. This is a presentation focusing on the general rules in our code, obviously the context of the downtown historic district, but we don't have specificity yet. For example, I do not know how many parcels will need to support the nomination or how many parcels will need to protest the nomination to kill it, because the boundaries are not fixed. All of the math regarding the parcels is dependent upon the boundaries. We don't have set boundaries, therefore we can't yet assess the precise math for the parcels. I want to put that up front. The rules that I'm going to cover in these next couple of slides were set by the City Council after the Taormina Historic District, which was the last historic district, the first, last, and only set by the city, and that was under a different set of rules under the prior Historic Preservation Commission code. The general process is comparable, but not the specifics. Those have been changed. Last, the rules I'm going to cover were set by the City Council back in 2019. They can be changed by the City Council if the City Council wants to change the rules and has a rational basis to do so. The Historic Preservation Commission could recommend to the City Council considering changing the rules. I know that has been in conversation of late and is an option before the table. So if the commission wants to recommend that the council evaluate changing the rules, that is possible. In the meantime, I'm going to cover what the current code is. So the current code has a two-step process: nomination and Historic Preservation Commission recommendation. Then it comes to the City Council for both public hearings, public hearing in Historic Preservation Commission, public hearing at City Council. City Council considers, among other things, all of the standards in our code in 4808, 4807, 8, and 9 regarding the criteria necessary to be a historic district and the majority protest process. So it's two steps. To move forward, step one, the Historic Preservation Commission cannot recommend nomination to the council of a historic district unless there is evidence that a majority of the owners of parcels within the proposed district support the nomination. So the best analogy is for those who have been involved in the nomination process for candidates for city council. A candidate who wants to run for council has to get signatures of a certain number of people to support their campaign. It's not an election where the ballot is sent to everyone in the city. The proponent, the candidate, must go out and formally gather evidence of support, signatures supporting their nomination for council. The same process here. Those who would like a historic district to be created, in this context, the downtown historic district, must go out and gather evidence, signatures, from a majority of owners of the parcels within the district to support the nomination. The city will provide a form for that process at such time as we get there. I think we'll be providing the form once the boundaries are set. And the city will provide, of course, a list of who, according to city's records, owns all properties that are in the boundaries as proposed. And that will be used to test that there is a majority support. Now, the nomination is a majority of the owners of parcels within the district. And this is where it's the current code. That's one vote per parcel or one signature per parcel. And each ownership entity has a maximum of one vote. So if Bob owns 2 parcels, he gets 1 signature. If Bob and his wife Alice together own 2 parcels, they have to agree on what to sign. However, they have already signed up to manage their property. They get 1 signature together. That's the change from Taormina. The rules under the Taormina time were that it was simply the number of people who owned it. So Bob got 1 signature, Bob and Alice got 2. That has been changed. The code now is clear that it's 1 signature per ownership entity. So Bob is the only owner, 1 signature. Bob and Alice each own 50-50, not 2 signatures. Now it's just 1. But the piece that is still in the code is that it's 1 vote per ownership entity. I recognize that this piece is of some debate, and that's where I noted at the beginning, the code could be changed if the Historic Preservation Commission would like to recommend to the city council changing the code. That figure could be changed. As is perhaps obvious, this favors smaller owners who have fewer parcels over those who own more parcels. If the nomination does not have majority support, that is, if the proponents of the nomination, the people who want it to happen, have not gathered evidence, signatures from a majority of owners of parcels within the district, tested at that test, 1 vote per parcel, and each ownership entity having a max of 1 vote no matter how many parcels they own, then it cannot go forward. So step 1 is a nomination, much like a city council candidate who has to produce 20 or 30 signatures to nominate their candidacy. It is not an election, it's a nomination showing majority support. That then goes to HPC. HPC could review and recommend approval of the district. Now, of course, the HPC's review and recommendation will have to take into account all of the other criteria in the code for what is an appropriate historic district. And the code, I have seen less controversy there. So that's the standard set in the code in 4807 and 4808. So if the HBC does that, then we go to step 2. Sorry, one more slide on step 1. So when the nomination comes in with the majority support, HPC has 90 days to hold its public hearing and adopt a resolution recommending or not that the proposed district does or does not meet the criteria for designation. So assuming we move past that, now we go to step 2. Step 2 is the city council and the protest. So the council will hold a public hearing at least 30 days, but the precise timing is uncertain, after the HPC's vote to recommend approval of the district. And the city council process will include a majority protest process. This is the second step. In this step, a majority protest, equivalent to a Prop 218 protest for those who've gone through that for water rate or sewer rate, the opponents will have to affirmatively gather signatures opposing the district by a majority of owners of parcels within the district. It's the same test in reverse. The nomination requires evidence of a majority of support. A protest to kill it requires evidence of a majority in opposition. So one might posit that if you had a majority support at the beginning, you probably won't lose enough of your majority to then flip it the other way. But people change their minds, and everyone has the right to change their mind. No one's bound at the second stage by what they did at the first stage. Same process here. 1 vote per parcel, or one ability to sign a protest signature per parcel, no matter how many people own the parcel. And each ownership entity gets a max of 1 vote, no matter how many parcels they own. The city will provide a form for that. And it's not a true election. So the city will provide a form that anyone who owns property and would like to register their protest can use to register their protest. But I don't think we'll be mailing that form to everyone. We will, however, be mailing notice to everyone who owns property, because again, it's a notice public hearing of the city council. So a little bit sort of recap this point, which I know has been a point of some contention. This is, as I've stated, how the voting currently works under the current code as modified in 2019. It's the same for both nomination, step 1, protest, step 2, 1 vote per parcel. So my example, Bob and Alice own the parcel together. They still only get 1 signature. And if somebody owns multiple parcels, Bob and Alice own 3 parcels, they still only get 1 vote. That's a change from when Taormina was in place. And this is the line in the code that if the council would like to change it, the council could change it. So too, HPC could recommend a change by the city council. So to sum it up, we've got a 2-step process. Nomination, evidence that a majority of owners of parcels within the district support the district, necessary to move forward. Then goes, if HPC recommends approval of the district, it goes to the city council for a public hearing at city council at least 30 days later. City council can move forward and approve the district, but will have to assess, is there majority protest? The city will provide a form for nomination and a form for protest. The deadlines will be set in advance, but aren't set yet because we don't yet know when the proponents will be submitting the nomination. And there will be a protest deadline for city council. It'll be, I expect, the night of the city council hearing. So we'll open the hearing, take all public comment, take a pause, count up the protests, run the math, confirm, and then it will either have a majority protest and be dead, or not have a majority protest and go forward. And last, the rules that are set that I've just described are those that are in the current code. The Historic Preservation Commission could recommend that the city council make a change. And I know there's a number of options that have been discussed as potential changes. One might be that it's simply one signature per parcel, with a clear max of one vote per parcel or one signature per parcel. But if someone owns multiple parcels, they get more signatures. That would be a choice, as is the case under a landowner vote under LAFCO statutes. So with that, that's the end of my little presentation, and I will stop the screen share. And Lucas and I are both available for questions. And Chair Akins, I would recommend as a process, you might take commissioner questions, then public comment, and then return the item back to the commission. I would expect the ad hoc committee members will probably have a further report, but Lucas and I thought it important to get some initial information out from staff. Thank you.
Sorry, barky dogs in the other room. So no, I appreciate that, Matt. I appreciate the timing of it, and that you're both open for questions. So Cindy has raised her hand. I will let Cindy ask the first question.
Thanks for the presentation, Matt. I wanted to talk a little bit about the one vote per parcel and how it came into being. And I believe, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but I shared a legal treatise on that with Brian, and I think he may have sent it over to you. Is that correct? A legal document?
I'm not sure if that one's made it to my
historical document. The one vote per parcel is the national and the state standard on voting for districts like this. And the reason why that was developed over the last probably 60 years and through various incarnations and iterations, and why it came to that is because of all the potential problems and lawsuits that happened with the different ways that Matt described it could go, where the city of Ojai would change the voting based on, however they would decide to change it. But the national and the state standard of one vote per parcel was ultimately designed under the federal system of one man, one vote to keep votes from being purchased and to keep money from determining what a district would look like, wherein, let's pretend like an outside development company with deep pockets comes in and buys up a whole block of things that's one parcel and adds a lot of names to the title, thereby creating votes. So the reason why it's one vote per parcel is to keep people from adding their names to the parcel title to create votes, to keep people from adding, different entities into parcels and diluting the votes. And that way, if somebody owns a very expensive parcel next to a parcel that maybe isn't valued at that same level, it's still an equal vote. It's the same idea that somebody with a $10 million home and somebody with a $150,000 home, which doesn't exist anymore, so I don't even know why I said that. There are no $150,000 homes, but somebody with under $1 million home, if they want to vote in an election, their vote means the same thing. So, I just wanted to clarify a little bit about why that came about. And it's been at least 50 years, probably close to 70 years that this has been developed along these lines, through the years, the studies and how it's come to be determined as the most fair way to do this.
Great, thank you, Cindy. Other questions folks may have for Matt or for Lucas? Yes, Gina.
Well, first of all, thank you, Matt, for putting that together. That was very nice. Cleared up a lot of questions that even I had. One thing is, we are a state recognized downtown Ojai historic district. So when you talk about the creation of a district, it's already been created for us. It's as a state resource. So what we need to change the language to say city designated local or local district when you refer to it. So not to confuse what's already been done on a state level. And so that's the main thing. And then the other question that I had, when we're notifying people, some people within this district are part of the state historic district already. Some of these properties are not. It's almost as this, it's a different conversation when, let's say somebody didn't want to be a part of a downtown historic district who's already part of a downtown historic district. It's kind of like asking for something that already happened. The choice is already gone there. They cannot want to be part of the local version. But so that's, I'm not sure how we can do that in a way to make it make sense. So I just kind of put it out there that there are two things happening there. So I don't know.
I'm happy to add a little bit of clarity there. The state designated, not city approved, Caltrans derived historic district in downtown Ojai is just that, state designated, not city approved. That means two things. One, it is relevant for CEQA purposes. The state has decided that those resources listed on that district are resources for CEQA purposes and thus have to be analyzed for any project that requires discretionary city approval, which in Ojai means any exterior change in a non-residential, non-single story building requires design review permit. That triggers for exterior changes. That's a discretionary decision which triggers CEQA review under that state designated, state approved historic district. The local district that we're discussing, the local downtown historic district, is relevant to the city's codes because right now, as we saw with the El Roller Hotel the other day, anything that's defined as a resource by the state designated, state drafted historic district is relevant for CEQA purposes. And its analysis of potential impacts under the California Environmental Quality Act will, if requiring the preparation of a historic resource report, come to this commission for review and comment, but only review and comment. Under our local codes, the state's designation of a downtown historic district does not give this commission any power, any ability to review and approve the project. That's the distinction. A local designated historic district would give this commission the power to review and approve work permits, major and minor, depending on the scope of the work, for any project within the proposed local downtown historic district. So the difference is really about power and review and approval levels. That's where I think it's critical to bear that in mind.
I would like to, for property owners that may not know that this document exists, the Caltrans document, because we didn't know it existed until a few months ago. I just think that it might be helpful that they know that they're part of this because if their whole argument maybe against it would be having to have CEQA review, they're already going to have to do that. So I just think that as a property owner, I'd want to know that I was a state resource because becoming one without knowing it is kind of a strange occurrence here.
That is certainly something that any property owner may want to take a look at. It's also worth noting that any property owner may want to consider their options that may or may not exist regarding challenging the Caltrans derived state designated district. As I will note, that was never reviewed and approved by the city council. City has never accepted that. At this time, we have not decided to challenge it, but we've never accepted it either. And any property owner may or may not have their rights that may or may not exist. But I certainly would recommend, if a proposed local historic district moves forward, the group that is pushing that, I guess the ad hoc committee that is recommending it, that would be something to include in the information provided to property owners as something to bear in mind, with the caveat, of course, that anybody still has the remedies against Caltrans.
Thank you.
Good to know. Anyone else have questions for Matt on what he has presented to us? I'm sure other questions may come up later in the discussion, but our questions should focus just on what Matt presented to us. Matt,
And,
let me,
and Lucas is available as well.
okay, absolutely. So, well, my question is maybe a little bit more technical, Matt. I do have, as of yesterday and reviewing it sometime in the middle of the night for a few hours, getting home late from the grandkids. I have looked at the property names that were submitted in the property report. And there seems to be, in a few cases, and again, this is just based on the proposed boundaries that we will talk about later in this meeting. But so let me just give you an example. I'm not going to mention anybody and get slimed. So if Brian and Connie own one property and Connie and Brian owned the next property to it, how do we determine the ownership in there when the names are slightly different, or the partners in the name of the property given to me are not totally in line?
Would go by whoever is listed on the county's record, the record owner with current title. That's what we have to go by.
Okay, and Lucas had proposed that we do kind of a backup pulse to them to kind of get their blessing. Is that what you're talking about, Lucas?
Yeah, I mean, we can request labels from the county, but the caveat there is that would require spending money, and I don't want to do that more than once.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Which means setting the boundaries and knowing that those boundaries aren't going to change.
I'm for some reason hoping that we do that tonight. I think it's in big letters with highlights. Yeah, so Gina, again, questions for Matt or for Lucas? You're muted.
Actually, my question is for Cindy.
No, I think that should be a part of the.
I just think that my question is, it could be just for anyone. I know I've read this so many times, but I've read so many things at this point that I'm just convoluted in my brain here. So Cindy, Cindy had mentioned that it was the National Park Service, which is kind of where we should focus our guidelines for one vote, one parcel. But what about the entity? Is that mentioned with the National Park Service? Does anyone know?
You mean, can you rephrase that? The entity?
That, that if they own more than one parcel, is it one vote in the National Park Service? Is that how they suggest it? Or is it?
I understand it to be one vote per parcel. Is that correct, Matt?
My understanding is the same. The federal standards are one vote per parcel. So if Main Street LLC owns 4 parcels, they get 4 votes. That's my understanding of the federal standards. The city's current standard is if Main Street LLC owns 4 parcels, they get 1 signature, not 4.
Got it. Thank you.
And Gina, what happened with Taormina is that people were added onto title, which can create more votes.
Yep. Let's move on.
Okay.
Okay. So again, you mentioned what the but that's not what the city code stands was for, and that the city council looked at that in the February, I think 25th, 2019 meeting, and then March 12th, 2019 meeting. And I remember something like that. I remember you explaining it at the very end, and then they made a vote on that. Okay, so the city council is the ones that could change that, but they could take a recommendation, not just from the HPC, but they could receive recommendations from anyone that's within the city of Ojai. Is that correct?
Yes, although if it comes in from the public, the council won't agendize it unless 2 members of the city council or the mayor choose to put it on the council's agenda.
Okay.
This commission could make a recommendation that the council would take up.
Okay.
We don't take up items from random members of the public usually, absent the council deciding to put it on their agenda. But if this commission were to recommend, for example, to evaluate whether to shift to the state and federal standards, the commission can recommend it. The council could do it if desired.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think the other question I had, and it was referred to, is of the parcels that are within the current proposed downtown historic district, and we've mentioned this in our questions, the city actually owns a couple of these that are actually landmarks, whether city landmarks or national landmarks. Does the city get a vote in this process? Or do we X them out from the calculation?
They are parcels that are in the district, so they're not dropped from the denominator. As to whether the city council would choose to exercise its sovereign rights to support the nomination or oppose it, that's not a question I can answer.
Oh,
But
okay.
nothing in the current code drops the parcels out of the denominator.
Okay.
So too the parcels owned by other governments. I know the school district owns at least one parcel in this. I assume there's some others.
Yeah, the school district owns two. Again, from the data I saw, the city owns two. Other entities, none come to the mind, but that's, you know, current thought. So as you've proposed, that could change. Okay, looking through. So excellent. Thank you for the slideshow, Matt. That's covered now in the recording. I love recordings like that. Then I don't have to be scrambling notes and I can pay attention to it. Okay, any other questions then for Matt or Lucas on what they presented to us? Okay, we will then.
Brian, you got a question from Commissioner Prebor?
Oh, yeah. I
boy.
have a question. Can you guys hear me?
Everybody's popping, yes.
I have a question about the Caltrans report. And to Matt, do we as a city, does the city council need to vote to accept that before
No,
we can?
it exists by virtue of Caltrans's actions. I only note that the city always retains its right to object to anything. So we haven't chosen to object to it. I suspect the city council may not want to do so, roughly really reading tea leaves. But I note that because we haven't accepted it formally, we always retain the right to object.
Should we be recommending to accept it? Or is that, I mean, if the city accepts it, then it becomes a different issue, right?
No, it still exists for CEQA purposes. We'd have to get a court order throwing it out, and then it wouldn't exist for CEQA purposes. I'm not sure the city council will want to do that.
Okay.
So my recommendation would be not to focus on that as a question, but rather
So
focus on the
you're
question of whether
saying
to
that
recommend
it
a local
still
district.
exists as a reference for CEQA, whether we as a city adopt it or not?
Correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Unless and until somebody gets a court order throwing it out.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Great,
Thank you.
thank you, Jenny. Okay, I think we're ready to open for public comments. That's what it says on my post-it in front of me. Cheryl, do we have folks waiting to speak on public comments on this item?
So we have several people in the waiting room. I do not see any raised hands. So if anyone would like to speak on this item, if they could use the raise hand function.
Nothing yet?
I see no raised hands.
I do want it to be known that we have no clue who has raised their hands, okay? People go, well, I had my hand raised. Yeah, we can't see your hand until you show up on the screen and your hand's still hanging out there. Okay, so then we will close public comments. Okay, so we'll now open it to discussion. I would like to start off with the first item I'd like to talk to, and has been addressed several times, is there has been an adjustment to the proposed area for the downtown historic district. I believe this was shared in the last meeting we had. It's also in the packet that was sent out. The last page, you can see the changes in there. So as we were talking with Matthew, with Lucas, I know Cheryl, there's a couple purposes. One is we want to draw that line on what we're talking about when we're talking to the public and telling them in their letters. Let me pause just for a second. Lucas, we had, I talked about this earlier, but we had 2 letters, public communications that came in from the public.
Yes.
How will they be recorded?
Well, they'll be available on our website for viewing. And then if you'd like, I can identify the 2 that we've received. One was received on March 8th and one was received on March 9th.
Yes, if you would, list those just so we have them in the.
Yeah, well, I think that's an important piece. Thank you, Chair Eakins, for bringing that up. They're sitting right here in front of me here.
Yeah, me too.
The first one is from an Ernest Salomon. And he's identifying that he does not support a downtown historic district. He identifies several reasons and covering several properties that have absolutely no historic significance or value. Discusses and asks about the Chevron station and its historic relevance. And then he asks or makes a comment that it's one thing to designate buildings that have a valid historic history, but it is madness to include buildings that have no historic significance. So that's one comment. And the second comment is from an Evan and Richard Batt. And it is, yeah, and it's and once again, these are available. These will be available for viewing on our website after this meeting. It states here that I'm a parcel owner inside the current map proposed by the Historic Preservation Commission as an area, and it seeks to designate historic district status. I've experienced firsthand that the city's lack of cohesive governance, compounded experiences, delays, additions, stipulations, determinations, and conditions that have no benefit to me or the community, and then the protesting essentially the historic designation and exercising exclusive right as a parcel owner qualifier or a voter, if you will. So this one obviously is identifying that they would not support the downtown historic district. So those are the 2 comments that we've received for tonight's meeting. And then I know there was information that was shared as a part of the discussion for tonight. And it was shared by one of the commissioners. That actually will be available as well. I believe that's a part of the discussion. Commissioner McCatton had provided that information for the full commission, but it's also provided for the community as well as a discussion piece. So.
Great, thank you. On those letters, and I'm trying to be careful to not step over the line, because we now have the property, or I have the property owner information. I know the specific area, specific location these individuals are at, but do we share anything so people get a reference to where these people are located? Is that a Matt question?
I'm not quite sure I understand the question. Let me rephrase it and you tell me if I got it right.
Okay.
Your question is, do we share with the commissioners and the public the address that goes with the name of the person who submitted their protest?
Well, I wasn't going to do the address. I was going to do a general area, but what are the guidelines?
So when we get to it, the protests are all public. So you've got a copy of, I believe the letter was already sent around, I think with the address redacted off. That address is public. So that could be the address or the specific can be provided. Given that we've not yet at that stage, I'm not sure it is relevant for tonight's discussion, but okay. It's public information.
Okay, I just wanted to know going forward. So I one of the individuals in the current thing is not, is it non-contributing? The other in the area is a contributing. So I think that's all I really feel comfortable sharing at the moment, but people will be able to tell based on the letters, more background information on the individuals. I just
That
want
information is fine.
very careful in doing that. Yes, Cindy.
I don't know if we should refer to these letters as protests. I consider them to be public comments.
Oh, yeah.
They're comments, is that not right?
Yes, there are comments.
Okay, so first of all, I don't think we should even be responding back to comments, right, Matt? Secondly, they're not protests, they're comments and opinions. Thirdly, not one single business owner in the downtown district has all the information, period. Nobody down there has maybe 50% of the correct information. So people out of hand, maybe they were commenting on what they read in the fabulous Ojai Valley News, you know? I mean, these are people who are commenting without all the information. So I think we should put those comments into the comment department and work on providing correct information in as many details as possible. And along those lines, I had a conversation last week with Chris Morris, who's the West Coast executive for the National Trust for Historic Preservation. And she's offered to join us as a guest speaker in April and address questions and comments where she invited us to submit our own questions as commissioners to her. And she'll double back to the National Trust if she does not have the information. But she's ready and available to join our meeting and really help us to provide the most correct and up-to-date information to the owners who, I again repeat, do not have the information.
Absolutely. Okay, so then at this time, I would like to ask Commissioner McHatton, if you can please share with us why the boundaries changed from the first iteration to the current iteration, please.
Hello. Okay. I don't know how to say this except kind of it's embarrassing at some point. What we were doing in an informal way was creating this map on my husband's iPad that he used from guidelines that we received, maps and overlays from the city. It wasn't a perfect science, but it was a way to have our ad hoc sit there and over these 2 years figure out whether or not it was a contributing, a landmark, a non-contributing building. We kept it in those 3 categories for this wide area that we picked. The problem was when something was non-contributing, I put it out of my mind. I told my husband to put it in gray, and then I didn't number it. I didn't worry about it because it wasn't something I was concerned about. I was concerned what was contributing and what was landmarked at the time. It wasn't until we started, well, I was asked by the city, do I have a list of all the non-contributing buildings, where I was accounted and I was like, oh no, these aren't even non-contributing. These shouldn't even be part of the district. They're not, some of them aren't even connected at all at this point. It was just kind of Craig and Walker and Brian Akins and myself just going through. So then we looked at it and trying to figure out, well, this is not really a cohesive district for the downtown because it includes far more non-contributing buildings than we would need to. It didn't make any sense. It was me, should have said to my husband, honey, cut it out for me, make it disappear instead of turn it gray. It was my error because I was thinking it was more of a, until it was like published in the paper and we're sharing it, it was like, I thought it was really internal. So once it went out there, now it has to officially change. It was my error. So once we went back and we were like, okay, what is this district? What are these gray properties? What's really non-contributing? And those non-contributing became, well, like the Chevron station, for instance, if it's something that's on Ojai Avenue, we would like to know that if they wanted to tear down the Chevron station and build a big 3-story building, that because it had frontage to Ojai Avenue like that, or like Mop Shop, those would be considered non-contributing because they don't contribute anything. They're going to have the same regulations to go through through Lucas as they do now. They probably won't come through the HPC unless for some reason Lucas thought they should. But because of their location across the street from a landmark on the main drag, down Ojai Avenue, those we kept as non-contributing. And then anything that was in the outskirts, like most of it was in the Aliso Matilaha block, and just trying to tie in that library at the top, the original library, we decided that just didn't make sense for this one little thing, that we would have all of these non-contributing places. So we just really talked it out and thought about, what does the district look like? And then I asked my husband again to actually delete them and not just gray them out. And then that's where we came up with numbering the gray properties, finding out their addresses. Because at that time, once we made it gray, we didn't even bother to find out the address. So then Brian and I were walking, driving bicycles all through the town, trying to identify them, write them down, and then get them to the city. And that is where that new map came from. So that's my long, sad excuse of what happened there. And I'm really sorry if I confused everybody.
And Gina, what was the number of properties that were eliminated between the first round and the second?
The original had 40 non-contributing. Now it has 21.
Okay. And so we have we based on the letters that we received in talking about, like the first one talked about the gas station, and I know where their building is. Not currently. We had in fact talked about taking that building out, and we did in one of our iterations, but it showed essentially a map with a blank spot. And so rather than raise questions, we put it back in as non-contributing. And Gina's comments on the gas station, that was also raised in letter number 1, was basically, it is just, it's the land that is being brought in, not the building on top of it has always been deemed as non-contributing. So that's where we are. So Gina, what are we? And the library that we were talking about was the original Thatcher Library that was a man cave until he passed away, I think last year.
It's up on Lion.
Yeah. Lion and Aliso. And
to capture that one place that really is, it would take a community of I don't know, I have a fantasy and future of donations and the community coming together to bring that back to life and have it be something, but it's not something that for a downtown historic district makes a lot of sense, where we would have to include so many non-contributing places just to capture that, and it didn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, and a good example of that is if you go on the western part, be the northwestern part of Matilaha, you'll see kind of a blank area, and then you'll see this block right there, and that is capturing the Lavender Inn, because of course it is a city landmark. The other one was the Ojai Presbyterian Church out there on the corner, Ojai landmark number 1. So if you see an area as Gina has described, there's something important in that little area that has been set apart. We were also trying not to gerrymander. We've all looked at, she and I have looked at, and Craig have looked at multiple cities, and they, as an example, our neighborhood, Santa Paula has a downtown historic district. It includes everything way far south, way far north, and it includes I think it includes Mupu School, which is on the Ojai Santa Paula Road on the right side, about 2 miles outside the city. So we were trying to get a group that was cohesive to the downtown. And we did it without even knowing there was a state historic Caltrans report.
that had the same shape that we had, even before and after we cut out the non-contributing. It still has the same shape. I think that some of the non-contributing that we kept in was based on conversations about what was across the street and what was next to it. even though the building itself is clearly non-contributing and doesn't contribute anything to the historic district, we try to think of it as, okay, if you're across the street from a landmark or you're next to a landmark, and then what's going to happen if that building changes drastically and becomes a 3-story big apartment building or something, and it dwarfed the arcade? That's really, because this is the downtown, because it's the civic center that we're trying to make a local district, is basically what would dwarf the downtown. That's really all we care about. If you have something that's you're gonna come and you're gonna see this thing that's just like hovering over it and making it look smaller and less significant, we'd want to have some sort of say about that. But other than that, I mean, a non-contributing is just what that is. It's a non-contributing.
Okay. And again, we took out, what did you say, 21? 20?
We kept 21, we took out 19.
Okay. And the only thing listed on any of the historic, like the structures of merit, sites of merit, was the Thatcher Library. I think everything else stayed intact with that change. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
so my next, Lucas, is there any way of sharing this map so people can see what we're looking at, what we're talking about?
Yeah, I can share it. Hold on.
Great, thank you.
So I don't know if everybody can see the blue line that goes around. That is the state resource. That is what the state calls the Downtown Ojai Historic District.
Yeah, can everybody see this?
I can.
Okay.
Yes, I can.
Okay.
It ends at Montgomery, the state, it
Yes.
looks like to me.
Yes, they ended at the the original Ojai City Hall building that was the Realtor building right there. They didn't go as far as the Chevron station. They
Yeah.
stopped right there.
So Gina, it looks like their big thing they left out was the Chaparral School.
Right. They didn't cross the street there because
Yeah.
this was for the
Right.
for their purposes.
Yeah, for their purposes.
Right.
But for a historic district, you'd have to include the chaparral. I mean, it's, this is just like common sense right here.
Right. But they were just doing it for
Yeah.
bike lanes
Yeah,
and
totally.
curbs and all that sort of stuff. So I mean,
Yeah.
it would be nice if they could have just kept going, and then we could have understood so much more,
Right.
And how to report on everything. But
technically, they've recognized this blue line area as a historic downtown, and the chaparral is a landmark in Ojai. So technically, that is the historic district, including the chaparral. The
Right.
Caltrans plus the chaparral already being designated. So, that's a plus.
You jump
You
across
didn't
the street.
overstep. You did not overstep.
Right. You jump across the street and there's the women's
Yeah.
center. That is a landmark. You go down Montgomery and that's the fire station. That's I think it's a county landmark.
Mhm.
And then you go up the street and you have on Aliso, you have that duplex, that's a landmark. And then you have the #1 landmark, which is the Presbyterian Church. So that is where those places around it, like Hippie Inn, going up to the massage place that was the dog groomer, that's now the day spa of Ojai. Those places are non-contributing, but they're across the street, and on both sides there's there's landmarks. So it's like, well, it would look weird to not include them, but that's where we're talking tonight. It's like some of those gray can still go away if we're comfortable with the fact that across the street from landmarks, we're taking buildings out. That, I mean, when you're non-contributing in a district, there's not a whole lot of reasons they would come really through us anyway. I mean, to historic preservation, unless they were doing something that Lucas felt that they needed to come to us for. So there's really no reason not to have them included. But once again, if it's gonna really, upset somebody or something, I mean, there's definitely room for conversation in there. But it seemed the most logical 21 non-contributing spots there.
Yeah.
A lot of it's city owned, a lot of it's open space, a lot of it's parking lots. things like that, all behind the arcade, all that open space is all city owned.
Yeah, Gina, I feel like the non-contributing buildings, they're gonna have to come before the planning commission, no matter what they do.
Right.
And the fact that they would be in a historic district actually helps the planning commission to have certain guidelines, because the planning commission gets slammed all the time because they don't have correct guidelines. So they're, they do have to wing it. And I think it's stressful. I know it's stressful for the planners to do that. So to me, it's a benefit to the planning commission. It helps streamline the process for everybody, particularly the parcel owners of the non-contributing buildings, which is goes back to my comment that these parcel owners do not have the information to even form an opinion about this. This is a much more streamlined experience for anybody that wants to work with the city of Ojai. It's a better experience.
Right. And that's the thing. It's because of the way we did it through COVID and waiting for our joint council meeting to get approval, we couldn't reach out to the public. So the public is forming opinions before they understand what is being asked of them. And it's a shame, because I really wish we could have done the other way around, where we could have reached out first, but we didn't want to do that because it wouldn't be right. We had to go through council and get council approval first. But we're playing catch up here to try and educate people. And that's what the 30 question and answers are that we're going to discuss next.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, if somebody determines for some reason they think their property might be suitable for landmarking, they can, of course, apply. They're not precluded from doing that. We just felt like we did the best. So you can see the filling station we were talking about. It's gray. Across the street from that is the nest. Pinion on the one side of that. Those are areas, but again, these are key corners within the downtown historic district. So we wanted to identify the buildings there, but also recognize that they are not historic and not contributing.
And that's one point that's worth emphasizing to make sure that all understand. For the areas that are marked in the proposed draft local historic district as non-contributing, if this was to be the adopted map, the non-contributing areas will not need Historic Preservation Commission review and approval for any interior work and for minor exterior work, but would need some sort of work permit, probably a minor work permit, for major exterior alteration in order to assess if major exterior alteration would, although not on a contributing structure, would adversely impact the character of the remaining contributing and landmarked structures. That's the key piece that's worth bearing in mind. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Matt. So does anybody have any more questions on this map to Gina or Lucas, to Matt, to if not, I think it's, yes, Jenny.
I have a question.
I see your hand.
Well, my question is, if the nest, say, or the plaza where Pinion is, if they wanted to renovate, would they still need to go before the planning commission?
Yes, any exterior alteration of a non-residential, non-single story structure single-family residential requires planning commission review and approval through the design review permit process, unless exempted through the director's exemption process. So short answer, yes, exterior alterations on commercial properties require planning commission review and approval unless minor.
So whatever
independent of this
requirements are currently ongoing in the city would apply to them regardless, whether they're in the historic district or not.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Great, good question. Thank you, Lindy. Cindy.
Matt, is there some kind of a world where the historic preservation can have a joint meeting with the planning commission and we can talk about creating, I don't want to use the word guidelines because that might be too definitive, but creating a thought process where the planning commission has some understanding of the historic district and what it means. And I'm asking this question because in my world, I envision a historic district as being more streamlined, where the planning commission, and I'm talking about Carmel and I'm talking about Pasadena, where they work hand in hand with historic preservation and everybody's on the same page and everybody knows what's asked of them. Because in the last 20 years, what I've seen in Ojai is a jumble, and the El Roblar Hotel is the perfect example where they've been bounced back and forth because there is not a streamline or even a specific process. You know, ideally, the El Roblar Hotel would have done their historic report initially. We would have seen it 2 years ago. They would be well on their way. So I would really like to see our commission work with the planning commission initially, just to create an understanding of what's happening between the two of us, since we are working together. Is that a possibility?
Yes, it's possible for there to be a joint PC-HPC meeting. If the goal was to discuss whether the downtown historic district would have guidelines, standards, rules, regulations, pick your phrase, that would allow for some sort of streamlined review and approval of projects within the district under various rules and regs, then yes, that's possible. I would, because that would require changing the current code, which requires a stacked set of approvals, HBC review and comment, and or HBC review and approval, then planning commission review and approval. I think off the top of my head, we might want to run that through council, but certainly the idea of a streamlined review would likely find support. I would suggest that if that's the request, the HBC could ask council to consider either directing that HPC develop a streamlined approval recommendation and sit down with PC to do so, or that we start with an HPC PC joint meeting. But my recommendation would be we probably loop that through council, perhaps on consent. And Lucas, when is the next joint HPC city council meeting? Do we know that date?
Well, we just
2025.
Yeah, I was gonna say 2025.
I would say if we already had it scheduled, that'd be an easy solution. So I would suggest that Lucas and I will take that back to the city manager. If there's consensus from the commission that that's a request, we'll take that back to the city manager and sort out in consultation with the mayor who is on this call, how that makes sense mechanically.
Matt, I have a word for us to use on this historic preservation planning commission thing, and I'm calling it a workshop. I'm calling it a sharing of ideas where they share the challenges that they experience, and there are many, and we share our challenges, and we workshop a way to streamline the process, which possibly includes waiving some fees for the property owners. You know, and yes, Ojai needs the money, but yes, Ojai should be looking at raising sales taxes, but that's another conversation. But I think if we use the word workshop, it's less terrifying than joint meeting and other definitive nouns that are out there. Is that all right with you?
Sounds good.
It's not up to me, but that strikes me as a reasonable phrase.
Okay. Let's use the word, let's put workshop in our vocabulary.
Written down. Jenny, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I agree with that. I find it really disappointing that we aren't ever in a position where we can have a dialogue about this and, you know, benefit from everyone's background and experience and actually come up with some solutions through a dialogue. And it feels very frustrating that we never seem to have that. Can you guys see me? You can't see me.
Yes.
Yeah, we can see you.
Okay. So I don't know, Matt, maybe that's a question to you, why is that? Is that part of the Brown Act or some other restrictions that we can't, you know, have, as Cindy's saying, a workshop or a dialogue where we're trying to work together to come up with solutions and just have discussion.
So right now is that space. Tonight
Right,
is an
but
agenda
that's
item to
right, it
discuss the
is, but
district.
it's just, the space is just us. The
Yeah, I
space
see
is
your
not,
point. You want to
do you
add
know what I mean? The
the
space is not with, I don't know. I mean, it definitely the planning commission, you know, if not other commissions. I just feel like us talking to ourselves is, you know, is not exactly what we need to do. I mean, I just find that very frustrating that we can't have this kind of dialogue, that solutions come out of the dialogue, not,
Yeah.
you know, with our partners.
You know, Jenny, you're giving me another idea too. It's very hard to schedule a joint, I'm not saying we're meeting ever again, a joint workshop, but possibly, and this is really radical, we could have the HPC ad hoc meet with the planning commission ad hoc, and then share those dialogue workshop ideas. What do you think? Pretty
It's still, you know,
radical.
I mean, yes, it's still, we're still not getting, you know,
No,
we're not utilizing. I mean, this is a question for Matt. We are not utilizing the resources that we have. You know, we have all of these people that have all of these different experiences, and we're never in a place that we can benefit from that. And I'm curious about if we can find a solution to that.
Let me just interject here for a second. We are very fortunate that our staff liaison is also the staff liaison with the planning commission. So we do have someone that actually bridges that and can assist us in that goal and that objective. So
absolutely, and as noted, there's certainly a somewhat of a state stricture. We can absolutely have a workshop of the HPC and the planning commission together. It does have to be on an agenda with a minimum amount of notice. That's where the state's boundaries kick in. We haven't historically done so because we haven't received a request to do so. So I'm hearing a request to do so. Lucas and I can take that back to the city manager in consultation with the mayor and possibly the council. The reason for that second step is the resource allocation that goes into it. There's a fair amount of resources that go into putting on a public meeting, and none of us in the room have the power to approve that expenditure of resources. So that's where we'd have to take it up the chain. I would expect that there probably is support for that kind of a workshop, because we could streamline the process. And even if we can't solve everything in one workshop, we can streamline the number of meetings we'll have here as opposed to successive HPC, then PC, then HPC, then PC.
Yep. Great.
Matt, that's kind of why I thought we could do like a HPC ad hoc and a planning commission ad hoc, so that you're not having to schedule the meetings between the groups. It's so cumbersome that way. So maybe we could at least get some conversation points, you know, to agreed upon.
That's also
a very
possible. Right. Although the PC doesn't currently have an ad hoc committee on downtown historic district issues. So they haven't designated 2 of their number of 5 for that role.
Yeah, we can make them do that. We can ask
Right, but then
them.
that has to itself be listed on a planning commission agenda for the 5 to make that decision about who their 2 will be.
Yeah.
I wouldn't presume to make that decision for them.
Okay. It's just an offer to try to keep it from being a cumbersome city, you know, manager decision with the meetings and all that stuff.
Okay, Ken, Gina, a quick remark, and then I'd like to just pause this and move on to the downtown historic district boundary. And I think these are fabulous ideas, and I'm sure Lucas, sound like something you can give some thought to when you go into your planning commission meetings. I know Steve, I'm sure, would welcome the idea of working together.
Yeah, I would just wonder if there was a recommendation by the Historic Preservation Commission. My thought process is that would need to go to City Council and then bounce back to Planning Commission versus versus kind of a lateral move. I feel like
Uh-huh.
it needs to do this and then that. Matt, what's your thought on that?
I think that would make sense if I could. I will take this discussion as a consensus for a request from the HPC to set up a workshop with the right people to discuss the historic district rules, regulations, guidelines, streamlining options. Therefore, we'll take that request and sort out at the staff level how best to move it forward. That's what I would recommend, that we take that request. I'm not hearing opposition. We take that request and have the discussions we need to have on our end to figure out how to move it forward.
Okay, great. By the way, the last time I can remember that we had a joint HPC-PC meeting was a special meeting called about the dear sweet Ojai Valley Inn. Let's not go there. But that was a special HPC PC meeting. Yes, Gina, and then we'll move on to
Okay.
the boundaries.
So the first thing is just putting it out there, just so it's formally out there. When we talk about meeting with other commissions, I would also, at some point, love a workshop with the Arts Commission, because I think it's important and almost near time where we wanted to have a reach out to schools, to kids, possibly doing some sort of their own rendition of multimedia art of how they see the arcade and how they see the downtown Ojai and what it means to them, whether it's to writing, digital, paper mache, whatever it is that they want to present. And I think that would be really fun to, it's not really a historic preservation thing, even though we're guiding the downtown part of it, but to have a workshop with the Arts Commission at some point to do reach out to schools and get kids involved. So just kind of have that in the back of your head. That's the first part. The second part is part of these 30 questions. One thing that we do say a couple of times is that we have no intention of trying to make anything more cumbersome and trying to make things more difficult for property owners. And I think that, like we've talked about, I mean, this is where my maps originally came from, were the guidelines that I got from you all. And you can see all these little color coordinated are already things that go through the city before they, I mean, whether there's a downtown historic district or not. So getting together with planning and trying to work it out so it could be streamlined will be fulfilling a promise that I think is very important to our property owners, that we're not trying to muck it up here and make it so it's more cumbersome to be a part of something that is really extraordinary, to be a part of this downtown historic district.
Great, thank you, Gina. Lucas, anything from your end that we need to think about, questions we need to answer amongst ourselves before I solicit a motion?
A motion regarding
the boundaries for the downtown historic district.
Yep, nothing on my end.
My number one with the bullet for tonight. My number two is going to follow closely behind it. Okay, any other questions? Do we have a motion for doing the downtown historic district in line with the map that was put up in front of us by Lucas?
I make a motion to adopt the map as drawn by Gina and presented tonight.
And as a part of this packet.
As a part of this packet.
Okay.
Gina, you want to second that?
Can I? Yes, I would love to second that.
Okay, there we go.
Before a vote,
I'm sorry, what?
Before a vote, just one quick caveat.
Yes.
So the agenda doesn't include approval of anything. So this is a vote by which the commission will confirm that it supports the ad hoc committee's proposed boundaries, but it's not final nor formal.
Great.
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking, Matt. Thank you very much.
But give staff the green light to move forward with property owner information.
Yes. Okay, is your motion so amended, Cindy?
Yes.
Okay.
Am I muted? Yes, it's amended.
The second.
So amended.
Okay, Cheryl, could you take roll call, please?
Yes. Akins?
Yes.
Convery,
Yes.
James. Oh, she has left the meeting, I believe.
Yeah, she had to leave at 6.
Okay. McCatton,
Yes.
Prebor.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Excellent. Okay, the questions and answers now, Gina sent out an email through, I think it was through Lucas and Cheryl, and asked us to think about certain items. And that was sent out March 8th at 1:24 p.m. Gina.
Okay.
Number one is the 30 Q&As.
Does anybody have any questions or changes to the 30 Q&A that was prepared by Jenny and I?
Do you think we should sort of go through it? I mean, we don't have to read each one out loud and go through it, but I have a few comments as we go down the line. So like, does anyone have any questions about number 1, number 2, number 3, like that kind of thing? Or is that too much?
Gina, you want to walk us through those quickly?
You know that when we tried to do that last time, it ended up, I mean, it was amazing, but I thought I had a finished document, and oh my gosh, yeah, I cannot tell you how many document has been torn apart. But
but it was also, it was the first time we'd seen it, so we hadn't, you know. I mean, I have comments on 3 or 4 of them, but I'd rather if we all sort of went through it. Brian, is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine with me. So just walk us through them. Gina and Jenny, thank you both for all of your work on this. I went through it earlier, and I like it. Gina, you want to walk us through it, please?
Jenny, do you want to do that?
Jenny?
I did a lot of reading last time. My suggestion is to hear Cindy's comments if they're very specific and deal with those first before we dive into every line.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to do every line.
Can I mention
and you know, if anyone else has very specific comments to deal with those first.
Before any other comments.
Just a sec. Matthew.
Thank you. The document that we're discussing is not in the packet. So we need to make it available to the public before we can discuss it further. I don't have a copy of it. It's not in the public packet that's online. So can it be screen shared? I don't have a copy of it, so I can't screen share it. Can someone screen share it? Then we can discuss it. Otherwise, I think we have to defer that discussion.
Can you let me?
We can't talk about something the public doesn't have.
Okay, Gina can if she has permission.
Yeah, I can screen share it.
Perfect. And I don't control the Zoom, so I'll ask whoever does to give you the permissions to do so. That's probably James Hahn in the background.
So, Matt, if we're doing this, then
here we go.
We are sharing an unfinished document.
Okay, then, well, so you can kill the screen share. We have 2 choices. If we're discussing something in public, it has to be publicly visible.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or we don't discuss it in public. That's our 2 choices.
Okay, that's
okay.
Fine.
I think the understanding needs to, for the public, needs to be that this is a working document.
That's absolutely fine. It's a working draft document, subject to further refinement, further revision, and is not final.
Can I make a statement though?
Go ahead, Gina.
First of all, this document was originally done with Brian and myself. So Brian was very involved in the making of this document. Then it went over to Jenny and myself, who then tore it apart and reworked it and came out with this document. So with Valerie gone, the only person on the commission who has comment that is relevant, not having seen this or been a part of the creating of it, is Cindy. So it's really Cindy's. I think we're all done. We've exhausted our questions at this point. So I'm most interested in what Cindy has to say, because she's the only commissioner left that hasn't really spent time with this document. I
haven't been able to share, you know, in a meeting. I have to share my thoughts in a meeting, right, with all of us. I mean, I have not been able to do that. So if you could screen share it, I will continue to refer to it as the working document, Matt, so that everybody knows it's not real or yet.
Not
And
final.
then I can go through my thoughts. But thanks, Gina, for pointing that out. So you ready? Screen
Yeah.
share. Hit that button.
Where is it?
I'm doing it.
There
Okay.
it
There
comes.
you go. So I think number one, I didn't have any comments. Number two, what I am hearing from everyone I talked to, building owner, parcel owner, renter, are what are the specifics? So why does Ojai need a locally designated downtown historic district? The paragraph is fine, but you need a bullet point the benefits. You get this, you get this, you get this, you get this. And I can define those. I also think we need to work with Chris Morris, the National Trust West Coast liaison, to define some of those bullet points. But really the people of Ojai, the property owners, everybody, they want specifics. People want bite-sized, thoughts, Mills Act, consistency, better visibility, nationwide, a cleaner way forward, a more streamlined way to work with the city. Everybody's on the same page, fewer permit fees because you're not having to go through HBC and planning and this and that. It's more streamlined. So I really want to see, like, let's say 4 bullet points that just say 1, 2, 3, 4. This is what you get. So that's what I've got on number 2. I think that's.
I have a question with this. So this document, this 30 Q&As that was supposed to be basically an internal document. I mean, it's fine that everybody can see it, but the idea of this document is when the commissioners are out in town and somebody's like, well, what about this? You have this on your phone or print it out in your bag and you can pull it out and you can be like, well, let me see what it says here. And I can give you the best information that we have that's been agreed upon as a commission. What we want to take from this, which is what that blind email about, I asked everybody to read this document and talk about what you would like to see on a one sheet. That is where I think, Cindy,
Gina, if this document's going to go out there, you got a bullet point. Why does Ojai need a downtown historic district? And it needs to be because 1, 2, 3, 4. I think it's just too soft. Recognizing Ojai's downtown historic core affords property owners. People in Ojai don't talk like that, so it sounds like government talk. So they need to know we need it because 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay.
And that can follow the initials. And
why we're going
I
through
don't
this
know
number.
what 1, 2, 3, 4 is yet because there's like 10 reasons. I don't know what the 4 top reasons are, but that's my comment is let's find those 4 top reasons.
Okay, but let's just so we don't have to do this twice. Why we're going through it, if you think of, if as a commission, if anybody wants to say that's something that needs to be on that one sheet, that's something that, just so we can number them and know that, so when Jenny and I go back to this document as our ad hoc, we know what is the most important things that need to be on that order document. So we won't go through this twice. Just kind of have that in your head too.
No, I'm just saying it needs to be very specific. Number 2 it's vague right now. It needs to be much more specific because that's what the people want to know.
Got it.
They're going to read, if they read vague, they're immediately going to go to the dark side. That's just how it works. So number 3, why now makes sense. Number 4 makes sense. Number 5, I thought there's some vagueness where it says, for instance, therefore state law applies to potential modifications. Therefore state law already applies. I think the message is this is already a done deal. Therefore state law already applies. Ojai's historic preservation law already applies. Just clarify it. This is happening. This is done. So I just feel like the way people think in their, the way we speak to each other, there's a more direct approach that when you present this kind of language from the property owners I've spoken to, it's too vague. It creates suspicion on a certain level.
So why we're 3, 4, and 5, before I scroll down further, does any of the other commissioners, including Cindy, have any, should these be, included on that one sheet? Because obviously every 30 questions aren't going to fit on one page. So are these any of the most important information, or?
I just think it needs to be tightened up, like 5. There's a lot of language, therefore state law applies. It can just be state law already applies to potential modifications. The HPC will continue to work, not hopes to continue to work. You know what I mean? Just like, it just needs to be tighter.
Okay.
In my mind, because I think people just are really want to, all of the input I've gotten from property owners is they're like, yeah, but we want to know exactly what's happening.
Okay.
So I think the more specific and the tighter you can make it, and the less commas and adverbs, I think the cleaner it'll be.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Right.
Yeah.
On my end, if you're shrinking it down on the document, you don't have to put number 4 in there. That was just an assertion made in the newspaper in an editorial no one's reading.
Oh, I don't know, Brian. I didn't mind it. I thought it created suspicion. And I think that number 4 alleviates the suspicion.
You think that's a real suspicion?
Well, the newspaper made it that way. I mean, they want to sell papers. They got to do something.
Okay, well.
But it could also be shorter. We've been working on this for 2 years. Chaparral turned up 6 months ago. So the answer is no. I mean, that could just be that.
Yeah, I would just rather use the space, the attention we have to make our case rather than to defend other people's remarks.
Well, maybe number 4 is at the very end of the document. Maybe it's too soon. What do you think of that? I mean, there's a thought. Let's keep that in the thought process. Number 6, I didn't have a comment. Number 7.
Like 6, 7, 8. Okay.
Yeah, I feel like number 7 should be much shorter. I think it can just be tighter. Where did the Caltrans document come from? It came from this event and it's significant because of this. It can just be 2 sentences. I didn't rewrite the whole thing. I just made notes. Let's see. So that's all I have for that page. And then the next page is number 10 and 11.
9.
Again, number 10, I didn't have any.
For 9?
9, I didn't have any comments, unless you can try to shorten that. I just feel like they should all be a little more edited. I didn't physically edit everything. Number 10, I didn't have a comment. Number 11, it's like, why didn't the HPC get the Caltrans report before the state designation? I just felt like it should be, again, more streamlined to the general way people talk and receive information, because their eyes gloss over when they get government. Why didn't the HPC get the Caltrans report before the state designation? Because it was created for the Public Works Department and then it came to us. Very simple stuff.
So maybe if you go back up to the one that talks about where was it, number 4, I think it was, that you said the timeline.
The timeline.
Maybe that could just be put together into one on the.
Yeah, you could combine those. Yeah, perfectly. That's good.
Okay.
12, I didn't have any comments. 13, I'm not sure what my notes say. Are there any financial implications a contributing building? Within the proposed local district, many of the contributing buildings are already landmarks, so there won't be any new costs or changes. Let's see. I don't know. I just felt like that was could be a little bit more specific. Many of the contributing buildings are already landmarks, so there won't be any new costs or changes.
This one might be good for being bulleted because there's a lot of information in there.
Yeah, what does that mean? That there won't be any new costs or changes when what happens when they do work, when they apply for permits, you know what I mean?
Well, it just from what it already is.
Yeah, I think it just needs to be really more specific. Like
are already a landmark, so.
A contributing building in a historic district. Contributing buildings will not have any other restriction, will not have any further process or any more extended process than they already have. It's exactly the same. It actually streamlines it because historic preservation is working with the planning department to make sure everybody's, understanding the same information. And again, I didn't create the wording, I just made the notes.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think it needs to be like the HPC hopes to continue to work with the city. I think it needs to be more definitive. The HPC will work with the city to streamline the design guidelines.
Well,
the HPC is working with the city.
Yeah, I just, until tonight, it was a hope.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's not, no, it's a fact. It's not up.
Now it's
In my mind, it's a fact. Okay, then 14, I didn't have a note. 15, I didn't have a note. HPC trying to scare away developers. I would go right to the answer. This attracts the best type of developers, like Ron Polito, who developed the old Bank of America building and developed where the business center is. When did he do that? Like the 90s and early 2000s, and like the developers of the El Roblar Hotel, which looks to be a stellar property. I mean, I would cite actual places that people like. You know what I mean? I think it needs to be really specific.
Okay.
How can you even say it will scare away developers when you're looking at what Ron Polito did, which fits perfectly with our downtown and with the El Roblar Hotel? Those are top hotel people that came here because they can do this, because this is the place to do this. And we're facilitating that. I just think the word aggressive isn't the right word, but it needs just more definitive.
Yeah, I like that we're taking pluses and looking forward rather than combating something that popped up on Facebook.
Yeah. And like the best defense is a good offense, right, Brian? Do you watch football? I don't, but that's what I think.
I do.
I knew you did. Just saying.
Okay, so
I did watch the Warriors yesterday.
what about the other things on
That's
this?
basketball.
I know, it's still sports. Sports are sports.
Still a ball there.
There's
Okay.
a ball.
So the tax incentives, I think that should be on the one sheet.
Well, HPC, wait, what am I looking at?
Number 15.
Yeah, 15. Yeah, I mean, you can rearrange these if
No,
you
I'm
want,
just
but
saying-
yeah, that's on there.
That should be on the one sheet that gets like,
Yes.
Yeah.
because that's something.
Yeah,
that
I wouldn't say
really-
are there tax I would say what are the tax incentives? These are the tax incentives,
Okay. Well, yeah.
You're selling cars here. You got to sell this. We are selling cars.
I just want to be transparent. It's like,
Yeah.
It for the federal historic tax credits, there's a lot more hoops that you would have to jump through than you would for these states. The state right now is creating
They
it
can
as
figure that out later. No, these are the tax incentives.
that.
No, there's no such thing as an easy tax incentive. So we don't have to define that.
And then what about the number 17 looks really long. It's just, I wanted to explain. And then, I mean, there, like with the El Roblar and following standards, I think that maybe that needs to be said in here is when you take money from anybody, state, fed, city, then you have to follow the standards. That's what you do. If, like with the El Roblar, I mean, they really weren't interested in being a landmark or a Mills Act or, anything. And so it was before we have a district. So it's but I think it needs to be clear that we will be following the standards, since there seems to be a question that, when we're a local district and we are offering incentives that are applicable to certain properties that want to rehabilitate, and they're going to take federal state money, or they're in a Mills Act, that the state standards would be followed to the letter.
Yeah.
I think that needs to be in there because there seems to, be a question that that may not be the case, and that is the case. This was a different circumstance with the Elroy.
Yeah, I think 17 could definitely be streamlined, you know, and just be a little, just a little more streamlined about the information. You know, it doesn't have to be that much detail, but it's federal and state money. Federal and state incentives will not cost the city of Ojai anything. The Mills Act, however, results in this, but it balances out over here. You know, it should be just that.
Okay.
Because I think it's too detailed for many of these people aren't going to get a Mills Act, and just say there are only this number of, you know, I don't know. I feel like it needs to be more streamlined, and I can't do that right off the bat, but for sure. And that's where the newspaper made that crazy comment about how the city's going to lose $100,000 if everyone applies for Mills Act, and they're talking about fees, and then they turn around and say all the property owners have to pay all these extra fees. You know, it was like the most ridiculous, absurd thing that could have turned up in a newspaper almost. But you know, that's kind of what this addresses, is that absurdity.
Okay, yeah, but it needs to be.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And Jenny, you and I can work on this. I don't know what their schedules are.
Yeah, I think that you know, the factual, I mean, I get what Cindy's saying. I think that, you know, the factual stuff, it just, I'm not sure I love calling out different projects, because I don't know, like, who judges the success of the project, and then we're getting into, you know, I don't know, taste, or I'm not sure about that.
Back on 16, you mean?
What?
On 16, you mean? Where?
No. I'm just like, in general, I don't know if we should list specific projects.
Okay.
Well, if you're talking about scaring away developers, first, the Ron Polito projects, you know, they've created the downtown feeling, and they're kind of a perfect fit. And I think that most of the residents in Ojai don't know Ron Polito anymore. You know, that was early 2000s. So I think referencing those projects just shows you how to move forward with developers. And this thing about are people talking about scaring away developers? Is that a thing?
I think that came up with the school district building, like we were trying to stop development, and it's like, no, adaptive reuse is kind of everything when it comes to, and you know, and I think that people don't understand that. They think that we want every light bulb in place, and I was just trying to explain that, you know, the inside you can do whatever you want, like the contributing building, that the city hall that was the World University, that building, I mean, the entire inside is completely different, but the outside maintains enough we felt, you know, character of the original footprint and style that we called it contributing. But what they do with the inside is, you know.
No, I know. But what if it's something like the HPC is offering a way forward for developers to work in a more streamlined way with the city, rather than being, you know, you don't even have to say rather than being. You could just say the HPC with a historic downtown district, the historic preservation is offering a better way forward for developers to work with the city in a much clearer and more streamlined way. You don't have to reference a property, but I just think referencing the properties that Ron Polito did and the El Roblar, I mean, they said, I think in our meeting, or well, they've certainly said to me, if you had been involved with us early on, you being the HPC, we would have already been through this. We would have already known. We would have already done all this. It would have been easier.
And
so
the comment is for 16, these changes.
Yeah, and back to, I think what Jenny said about talking about specific instances.
Okay.
But I'm talking to the public, and I'm talking in this document to the building owners. They're asking specific questions. I've gotten questions from property owners saying, well, what about the El Roblar? You guys are holding it up. You particularly are stopping that place from being.
You know, it's so, we just can't respond to all that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I think that I just feel like
But we
there's
do
no
need to
way that any
respond.
of those people can know what has been going on with the El Roblar, right? So I do think it's frustrating to hear them say that it would have been easier if they had been engaged with HPC earlier. That's frustrating. That's what we want
Well,
to avoid.
No, but that's what this whole downtown historic core does. It creates.
No, I know, but
a
I'm saying
line.
that that is an example of what we want to avoid in the future, correct?
Yes,
Right.
yes.
Yes.
But I do think that education is everything. So, Jenny, so even though it's like frustrating, do we have to address all of the naysayers? The naysayers, if they're property owners and they have misinformation, it's our job. If we don't explain to them why this is a great idea, then it's not, that's our fault.
Gina, you know what?
I agree. I think that that's important. I just think that, responding to someone who's commenting on a project that they know nothing about is really, not a great approach.
Well,
So,
Jenny, they're all commenting on stuff. They basically don't have all the information, which is, the challenge.
And that's what we're doing now.
Yeah. So what I figured out what's bothering me about at 16 is the wording is the HPC trying to scare away developers. I would change that to how will this encourage high quality development? How will a downtown historic district elevate and attract excellent developers to town? Put a positive spin. It has a super negative spin on the question right now. Right?
It does. Yeah. But if that's, I'm happy either way. I don't want it to be a fluff piece. I really want this.
It's not. Just say how will a downtown historic core attract top quality developers and streamline the process? I mean, that's the question. That's not a fluff piece.
Okay.
Nope, I agree.
Is the HPC afraid of progress? No.
Yeah.
Well, look, I mean, we laugh, but these are questions that come from real people.
I know.
Okay, back to 17.
17, I didn't have any. I thought it could be just shorter and more, direct.
Okay.
18, there's already a design review in process by city staff and planning commission. When you say it's unlikely that a non-contributing building, blah, 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 to the end of the sentence, that's just hypothetical. I would take that out. It's unlikely that a non-contributing building would have proposed alteration not already. We don't know that. It's unlikely. I don't know. I just felt like it's too vague. Because you look at that, if I was reading that from the outside, I would go, well, it's unlikely, but it'll happen to me. It's unlikely, but the city will do it. That's kind of the bitterness that's out there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I agree. I would take it out. Anything that's, we don't know if it's likely or unlikely. We don't know.
Yeah. You're going to say there's already a design review in process. A proposed alteration will go through the city planning department just like it does now. That's the answer, right?
Yes,
Just
that is
take
the
out-
answer.
Take out
Yes.
the unlikely sentence because there's no reason. We're just
Take it out. And also, Gina, as an example, 3-story buildings in the downtown might come to the HPC. We have a code ordinance on a 25-foot height limit. There's no 3-story buildings.
Right. There, I
out.
agree with that. We should make that very clear.
Yes,
Take
Rob.
that out.
No,
As
there
an
are-
example.
Every time those housing people talk about 3-story townhouses, I don't know where they're coming from.
Yeah,
State
take
law
that whole thing
requires
out.
a third story in
Hang on
certain
just a second.
settings.
I got, who's going first, Matt or Lucas?
You can go first.
Thank you. State law requires that the city allow a third story in certain settings, none of which have happened yet, but it's possible. It would be subject to significant review and approval by the planning commission and probably the city council. It would only apply for a project that had the right kind and enough affordable housing, deed restricted for 55 years, but it's theoretically possible.
Yeah, theoretically,
Okay,
that's
good to know.
But currently,
Wait,
per our
wait,
current code,
Wait,
Hey,
wait.
Brian,
Lucas,
Brian, is there a third story?
Lucas, your turn.
We have existing third-story buildings along Matilaha. If you look at Matilaha, you'll see there's a third-story element.
Yep.
But what's the height? What's the height? Isn't it about the height limit?
That height limit is 35 feet. Within that
Matilaha and what? What's the address? On the corner?
Matilaha and Montgomery.
Montgomery,
You don't
yeah.
notice it until
So
you
there's-
actually go to the
there's a-
backside and look up.
There's a little pop-up area that was, I think originally, that
Yeah.
research was that it was supposed to be like a private club that never really
There is.
happened up there. But there is a little
Yeah, just be careful
pop-up.
with that statement. And to Matt's point regarding recent regulations, especially regarding affordable housing, yes, those statements, the state's really squeezing us on certain
Yeah.
parameters.
Right.
But
But
for
Those would not be located in the historic district.
We don't know that.
Three-story apartment buildings.
We don't know that. They could be.
Yeah. But for our purposes tonight, and number 18, I don't think we need the sentence as an example, 3-story buildings in the downtown might come to HPC. I mean, I think the document's trying to be edited down and we can take that sentence out without getting arrested.
I would not mention 3-story buildings in this document.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
I don't think
concerns
it's
with
relevant.
that deletion.
I think that once again, the only reason why it was mentioned is that whole idea of overwhelming the arcade. And,
Yeah.
and
Right.
how if that was to happen, I think that planning and I mean everybody else would come to that same conclusion if it was going to overwhelm
Yeah.
the arcade. So that was the only reason. So I'm
I
happy-
just
Well,
feel like
we can step back from that.
okay.
there's a lot of questions from non-contributing owners about how they're going to be impacted. So to me, number 18 question, how will you guys be impacted? There's already a design review in process. Take out the unlikely thing. If the city planner sees something of concern, they can ask the HPC weigh in as they would do, whether there were a historic district or not, and that's it. Like nothing's going to change for non-contributing people. If the city planner sees a problem, they're going to pull an HPC. So if you're way off base, but I just think that should be really direct.
Okay.
It's exactly the same process because that's a huge, huge question for everybody. And that's what one of the comments was tonight. We're a non-contributing building. Why are you torturing us?
And one point to bear in mind.
Potentially
there
torturing us.
Yes, Matt.
is a change in the process. That's one point to bear in mind. Requiring review and assessment of non-contributing structures for potential impacts to the landmarked and contributing structures is different than what they have to do right now. However, the idea of going to the planning commission, that's always true. Any exterior change other than a single-story, single-family residence is already going to planning commission unless exempted at the director's level. But that's one thing I think it's important to clarify. It is a change. It may not be the sea change that folks think it is, but it is a change.
Matt, does it have to come to HPC or only if the planning commission feels that it's necessary because the design is out of the historic element? For instance, if somebody
The issue is who tests that decision. It'll be the director in the first instance, but if anyone on the HPC disagrees with the director's assessment, they'll appeal that decision up to the HPC.
Yeah. And is that something we can do at this point without a historic downtown core? Anyway?
Not if a building is not itself landmarked or is not itself within the Caltrans approved state designated district and is listed as a secret resource. If it's none of those two, then it doesn't have any historic impact at all.
Okay,
It would never come to this commission.
So in theory, I have a non-contributing building. I present a design review to the planning commission. They feel that it's within the historic guidelines. They approve it. I move on. Or I present a design that the planning commission feels is out of line and they bring in the HPC to review. Is that what we're talking about?
Likely, that would be the likely process. And that's the point that's worth bearing in mind. They now have to consider compliance with the historic guidelines.
So
isn't
right now. That's the
Isn't
difference.
that similar to what happened with El Roblar?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
It
So
would
that's
be similar to the
problematic.
El Roblar process, yes. It would
Okay, so it's
be-
happening to the El Roblar without a historic downtown core already, which makes it a little more confusing because we're all
Because El
working with
Roblar
that
is-
frame.
And the reason for that is because El Roblar is in the Caltrans state designated historic
Yeah.
district.
Okay,
This
so,
would be different for properties that are not in that district, but would be.
which is a limited amount of
structures in the city
properties.
district.
It's, according to our map, it's just a few more properties. It just affects a few people.
Right, and what we are asking of them is right now the city, it says in the city somewhere that it needs to be Spanish and go with, and we don't even, we wouldn't even enforce that part of it. So I'm not sure how much we would want to weigh in on non-contributing buildings unless it's something that was really out of whack. We're planning,
Yeah.
What is this? And then
Yeah.
let's run it by them.
One
I think-
solution to this concern from non-contributing building owners is when the district, if approved, has very clear requirements or guidelines or standards for alterations for non-contributing structures. If the rules governing the district are very clear, then the owners would know what they'd be looking at, and they would know upfront what they could do that would not trigger
Yep.
full-scale HPC review and what would trigger full-scale HPC review. That's tough to do upfront because I don't think those exist yet, but that's something to think about as the ad hocs move forward.
Yes, and
Yes.
that's one of the reasons why we wanted that workshop, so we can get the language down and I mean, this has to be friendly to everyone. I mean, our job is to protect this resource, but we also don't want to put any unnecessary hindrance on any of the property owners. So
Yeah.
it's finding that balance.
I think Gina, number 18, non-contributing building owners is a big one. And if the more shorter it can be and the more clear about it's the same process you're already in unless
I'm
you,
taking out the first sentence and the last sentence.
Yeah. yeah. Yeah, that will work. But I just, that to me is the question I'm hearing. How is this going to affect the non-contributing building?
Okay.
So we're at 22, 23. I would skip, I was fine with 20, 21, 22.
The 18, if it ends right there, Matt, does that cover what you said? If the city planner sees something of concern that might affect the integrity of the district, they can choose to have the HPC weigh in. Is that an accurate statement?
I would recommend adjusting it to that plus approval of a minor work permit may be required, depending on the scope of the alterations. Under section 4815B of our code. If you don't want to cite code in this document, it's something like a historic review and approval by the city planner and possibly the city community development director and possibly the Historic Preservation Commission may be required.
Okay.
And then the rest of it would be fine. That might affect the integrity of the district. That'd be fine. And I concur with the deleting the 3-story example. Perhaps not.
Yeah, I agree with what Matt just said. That's
great. And I just wrote down, go listen to Matt because I was trying to write really fast. I want to get it exactly right. So I'm just going to go back and listen.
Go back to YouTube and listen to Matt.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Ready to move on?
We're at 19, 20, and 21.
19, 20, 21, 22. I don't have any comments.
Okay, how about for the one
20
sheet? Or any of
Which?
these? Do any of these
What?
need to be
Can
included?
you move it up a little?
To 18?
No,
No,
go
can
down.
you move it? I mean,
Oh, up the other way. Well,
Yeah.
let's just do 19, 20, and 21 first. How about that?
okay.
I don't have any comments until 23.
But do any of these, do we want any of these on a one sheet? Are they crucial?
Oh. I don't know. I think they're all good. I
Yeah,
think
I like
know.
20. I like 21. I mean, one of the things from the first letter that arrived, actually at their last kind of toss on the paper was, yes, and historic properties decrease in value. And after I finished yelling at the screen. So, you know, these are the things that play up the positives for being in or near a downtown historic district.
Well, I think that those, you know, is that true? I mean, I think in some of those comments, it's like, you know, is there an example of an historic property that has lost its value?
Yeah, the
No.
information about from number 20 came directly from the National Park Service. These are their selling points for downtown historic districts.
Do we our problem with historic landmarks in the city has not been that they're going downhill. It's been that new people are coming in and changing it.
It's been that they don't have correct guidelines, right, Brian?
Yes. I mean, the only one that's gone downhill is the Thatcher Library.
Yeah.
We were trying to figure out 5 people that actually knew what that place was.
I love that place.
You know, are you guys trying to make one page?
No.
Two-sided?
Yeah. I have a suggestion. Can we make a QR code that people can scan and read the whole document?
Sure, but do they want to read the whole document?
Yes. Yes.
Well, I think
these are property owners. These are people. They want to know all the information. They read the Ojai Valley News. They can read the QR code document.
A lot of people also read the entire report for the El Roblar. So
yeah, I think we should have a QR that goes straight to the document.
I think that's a good idea.
I do too. Lucas?
Where's Lucas? He went for a drink.
And now I'm here.
He's there. Lucas, has anybody used a QR code?
Yes. So for the flyers that we've been putting together for the general plan update, we've been using, or wait, no, do we use a QR code or we just use a simple link? Might have been a link. No, at one point it was a QR code. For the workshops, there were QR codes.
Yeah, there was something in the city with a QR code. I thought, hey, that's cool.
Okay,
Yeah,
what if
for the workshop?
What if we have a postcard that has a couple of bullet points on it with a couple of questions, and it says, want to know the answer, and there's a QR code, and that's what goes out. Oh, backing up, I almost forgot this one. Chris Morris from the National Trust said there is a grant of up to $5,000 for places like Ojai to help, you know, for instance, create these postcards with a QR code. It's a matching grant. I already have a commitment for $2,000 to match the grant. So we could apply for $5,000 to develop public outreach for the historic downtown core.
Nice.
So I've already got the money to match the grant, and we could create this QR code, you know, even postcard that goes out to people. What do you think?
I think the hardest part would be picking the image. I mean, when I was doing my slideshow, that was the hardest thing. There were so many beautiful pictures of this downtown throughout the years. How do you pick just one?
We could have a QR code with a post office tower right in the middle. You know?
Okay, so I'm going on now to.
Yes, 23, but keep that in mind. We do have a matching grant to have some $5,000, and the $5,000 can go toward an event where business owners can come and hear, you know, information about it. We could have an event for them. So it's a nice little grant. 23, won't this just make it harder on property owners? It sounds like a lot of red tape. I wouldn't have being a 100-year-old civic center in 2019. I would go straight to, I believe it's the third sentence. Ordinary repair and maintenance do not have to come to the HPC. That's the first sentence. That's the question I get all the time. every time I want to change a window, I'm going to have to go in front of HPC. Somebody said that to me. If I put a window shade over my front door, I have to go to HPC. So I think the most important answer here is ordinary repair and maintenance do not have to come to HPC. And then what does it say? Our ad hoc committee for the locally made it to the priority. I don't know. I just feel like that's the most thing. You know, it will not, ordinary repair does not have to come to HBC. It will not be harder on property owners. In fact, it will be much faster and easier for property owners. That's our goal, because that is our goal.
Yes.
You know, this is what people are really worried about. They don't want more fees. They don't want more red tape. They don't want words and long sentences and hearing about standards. You know, they just want to know, how is this going to affect me? And how much will it cost? And how much will I save? Those are the three questions.
Okay.
And that might be it for me. Let's see, where are we? How many more questions are there? There's 29.
There's 30.
There's 30. That was it, you know?
Okay, well, let's finish going through these for everybody else. I want to remodel the inside of my space. That's whole part of that. That could probably be combined with 23, the way you just said it about,
yes.
If we take out that whole first half and we start out with ordinary repair, we could probably just go on to landmarks would be reviewed as usual, no changes, and just combine 23 and 24 together.
Perfect. Yeah, ordinary repair and maintenance, blah, 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 and then go to the landmark thing.
Yeah.
And not put, in fact, our ad hoc committee made it a priority. That's peripheral. Just ordinary repair, landmarks will be reviewed as usual.
And but it's so,
yeah, and in other words, you could say, in other words, there aren't any changes. But the argument that's going to come back is, well, then why do we need a historic downtown core? And you can say, well, then why do we need a downtown core? Yeah, for incentives, because it'll help you make more money.
Yeah. And then now that we had this conversation with the slide presentation from Matt, what do I put for 25?
Matt's phone number.
No.
What's your cell phone, Matt?
We can work with something to write up a 2 or 3 sentence line to go there. The biggest thing is the numbers are unclear because the boundaries are now clear, so we can start to figure the numbers. We can put up I'll work with Lucas to write something.
Thank you.
And I will work up this weekend, Lucas, and basically try to put some stats together that can be reviewed to see if I got it correct in my understanding. And, you know, that way your staff doesn't have to worry about all those little fine things.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I already started a spreadsheet this afternoon, so.
All right.
And Matt, can you read 26?
Yes.
I'm accurate there.
Will that free? Yeah, that's fine. The second, the third from the last sentence is the most important. Contributing properties will remain subject to review under CEQA.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then 27 and 28.
Do we need 28 since you had answered that earlier, I think, like the timeline about Chaparral? Do we need that?
Well, let's just say that, let's make sure that 28 is said somewhere else too. So when Jenny and I go back through, we'll make sure that that is absorbed somewhere else.
Okay. Yeah, or you could even put it in 27 somewhere, right?
Yes.
I don't know. I mean, how much longer is that relevant?
Yeah. You mean is 28 relevant?
How much longer is why are we hearing about it now relevant when it's been out there for 2 months?
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's still they're hearing it from everybody else except from us, and that was the problem.
Yeah, I think yeah, we don't need it. I don't think it matters
Okay.
anymore.
Okay. And then the last two are lots of bullets. So let's do 29 first.
I like the bullet points.
Me too. I like ending with just like, it's like going to Disneyland. It's like that, or anywhere. The end of the fireworks, it's like, it's kind of like, the last two are just like bullet points. It's because I refuse to go longer than 30 questions. So
yeah, no, it's good. So what I would like to see is a postcard or a short info card with a QR code that leads to this. And I would like to see when this document has incorporated some of the changes we've talked about tonight, are we allowed to share it with Chris Morris from the National Trust along with some questions that she can interact with us during our next meeting?
So I guess the first thing that would happen would be Jenny and I would make the changes, and then we would send it back to Lucas and Cheryl to look over, and then send it to all the commissioners. And then, this is like right now, it's a public document. I think we could share it with whoever we want to share it with.
Absolutely. Yeah. And to Commissioner McCatton's point, after tonight's meeting, Commissioner McCatton, if you could share this with me, because we'll put this as a part of the comments for tonight as well. So it's out there for the public to see.
You do have it. I sent it to you asking for you to, this is what was asked to be copied to
be copied. Oh, so I do have it?
Yeah, it was the map and this. It just, the map came up big, and then this was just, a little post stamp at the bottom, but it was in there.
Just today.
Well,
right?
A couple of days ago, whenever you all got it. I think it was the 8th that it was sent out. But I can send it again. I also
it was March 8th at 12:50 a.m. in the morning.
All I have to do is look for the one that's sometime in the early wee hours in the morning. Huh?
Yeah, that's always me. Sorry.
There should be a way to change our clock so people don't know we're actually sending things out at 3 a.m.
I know when I go onto the spreadsheet document, I'll see Brian's little icon up there. It's just like, oh no, it's like both of us at 2 a.m. I could see his little cursors coming onto that. So yeah, this has been a long time coming. There's a lot of work going into this, and so hopefully it's almost done. But Lucas, do you want a PDF of this, or do you want to be able to access it and edit it?
No, just a PDF is fine.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
And then Matt, are you going to put something together on that one little paragraph, a couple lines that references you?
Number 25, is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Lucas and I can put something together.
Yeah, we'll work together on that one.
Thank you.
And yeah, while we're talking about the stuff you did, Matt, great slideshow. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now it's on the record, so we can, let other people see it.
The other thing that's important to bear in mind is it will be up to the proponents, which might be this commission, might be the ad hoc committee, to affirmatively gather the majority support for the nomination at the right time. That's not something that staff will do. You don't have council direction to do so.
Yeah.
So Cindy, how quickly can we access those funds if we wanted? Is this something that's over weeks, months?
Couple months, probably. 8 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we want to read 29 and 30 to make sure that the last two, there's a lot of bullet points to make sure there's nothing hidden in there that's incorrect. The main thing is I just want to make sure we're never misrepresenting anything. So.
I didn't see anything.
No. Let me scroll down on 30. 30's long. There we go.
Yeah, people can relate to that, but now as repairs and maintenance costs are quickly rising, it will become more and more of a struggle to maintain a rich Ojai history.
Mm-hmm.
to me, it was a, hey, let's keep what we're doing and keep it well and not have to go through all of these headaches in the future.
So, knowing what we know now by our conversations this evening, is getting this done before August 7th still a realistic goal? Now that it's
only March.
Yeah.
Fast. I'm just wondering.
Totally.
Can we squeak it if this ever, is to go the direction that we believe it's could go? Can we still look at getting it in that centennial year?
I think so.
This doesn't have the impact to say, it was done in the 101st year as the 100th year. It'd be nice.
Yeah, no, I think we've made a lot of progress just in the last month. So
yeah, more than the last couple of years.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure, are we still talking about Chris Morris from the National Trust joining us in our April meeting? Because our April meeting is like 5 weeks away. It's a long month, and that will help us with our the grant that I mentioned. So I want to make sure that we don't forget to add that in.
Lucas, we can bring in a guest speaker, correct?
Yes, absolutely. We gotta make sure we notice and stuff. So yeah, make it known.
Okay.
I'll need more Cindy or Vice Chair
Convery.
I'm sorry. Sorry,
Vice Chair Cindy. Yeah, no, I was.
I'm almost said yeah. I'll just need more information. I can get that from you offline.
Yeah, cool. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, this is great.
The only other question I had for the commissioners was with that slideshow that I did at our joint meeting. Do we want a slideshow presentation that's geared toward taking this, on the road like we talked about, doing it in front of the realtors or the Lions Club or whoever we wanted to offer it to, having it up online for property owners that it's more specific, not 23 minutes long, but 4 or 5 minutes long? Or does it matter? Should we just stick with words?
I think the long one's interesting, Gina. I love the idea of offering it to groups. And I think I had a speaking engagement at Keller Williams probably about 6 or 7 years ago about preservation. And the realtors were very interested because it increases property values. So I think, if we're allowed privately, they'd be very interested to have a presentation. It's 20 minutes, 30 minutes, something like that.
It's 23, but it would have to be redone because the map is different. The information we're learning so much about, like the state incentives are so brand new that we're just finding out more information as we go.
But that's perfect amount. I mean, a 20-minute presentation, they have coffee and then questions and answers. I think that's reasonable.
Yeah.
I think they'd rather have more information than less, the real estate community.
Okay, so that's the first thing we'll do is we'll fix this document. Second thing we'll do is talking to you, Jenny.
I'm listening.
We'll try to make this into a simple one sheet sort of thing. Also, are we still doing a one sheet? Do we need that? If we're doing the QR code or a postcard, do we still?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure we can get all the information in a one sheet. So
we can do it like a point type. We can go really tiny.
I like the QR code.
I like the QR code as well.
Okay, so we could bypass going there. We can make this document more user-friendly to everybody. Instead of it just being an internal document, keep that in mind that this is something that will be a QR code for everyone to have. And then work on the slideshow presentation next to redo it.
I have another thought. There's, I don't know where or how this works, but we could put up little, if we do have a postcard with a QR code, at the farmer's market, we could hand them out and just sort of get them out into the community. Just make them available at Rainbow Bridge or, businesses that are supportive where they could be available to the community to learn more. Is that something we can do, Lucas?
I think so. Once you have the postcard,
Yeah,
I mean, there's absolutely nothing against distributing and getting the word out.
yeah. And I think people are much more likely to use their phone to log in and read something than to have a, a piece of paper where they have to sit at that minute and struggle through it.
Mm-hmm.
We're all tied to our devices, aren't we?
We
Yeah.
are.
Yeah,
QR codes are everywhere.
everywhere. Yeah, I think it could be fun.
Yeah, and there are a lot of fun QR codes now. It's not the ugly black and white thing anymore.
So as we separate, so we need to have two missions. So Cindy, if you could come up with some places for us to speak, then Jenny and I will come up with the information that will be said. So when we meet together again, we will have an idea of where we can talk to people. I also think, just having it available somewhere, more updated and current, that's not for the city council, but for property owners and for other stakeholders to watch it. Just having it on YouTube would be good as well. So we got to update it first. And but so next time we come together, if you guys can have some ideas of where we could, or who'd be interested in listening, and then we'll have it done by then.
Okay, that's great. Wait, do you want to do that in April then, Gina?
Yes.
Present that? Okay.
Yeah. As more information is getting out, I know Walker was invited to speak at Rotary. Tony Thatcher had invited me for it, and a lot of people came away from that talking. Some people tried to drill down, but they got put on hold because it's so early. But a lot of people came away from that saying, "Oh, that really helps because now I understand." And then other people that I've talked to have been, "Oh, wow, that's fabulous," because what I saw in the paper didn't look very favorable, and they very quickly switched over to just a conversation in the parking lot or anywhere else. Just they see you, they know you, they're like, "Hey, what can you tell me?"
Yeah.
I just want to know that when we're out there, everything that's coming out of our mouths to everyone is transparent and accurate. So nothing comes around and bites us later,
I don't think, Gina, that it's a problem to just say, I don't have all the information on every single detail because there's so much, but I'm happy to take it back to the city attorney and I'm happy to refer your questions. I think that's perfectly, acceptable.
Yeah, I think otherwise, it seems odd that we would present it as not being, complicated and have a lot of depth to it, right? Like, we don't want to make it so streamlined that everyone's like, I just feel like, maybe we should, it's good to have these longer documents.
Yeah.
Especially if they're that readily accessible.
Yeah, have them readily accessible, and the people that are really interested, instead of just chattering about it, will really read the material and learn what's really going on.
Yeah, and honestly, if people are asking, I've had some complicated questions come my way, and I've responded and just said, this is a really complicated issue. It's something to discuss with your tax attorney, and these are the parameters, and we're trying to create these outlines. I think that's a better answer than just, a pat short answer or trying to explain it when we're not tax attorneys, we're not historic tax people, and we're not Mills Act experts, a little bit, but not 100%. And we're not supposed to be, so I think these are the better responses to people.
Yes, but I just want, anytime we do put something in print, that it's accurate.
No, our bullet points are accurate.
Or anything. It's like, this is what we know, and this is what we wrote. And if we haven't written it down, it's because we don't know.
No,
know,
well, Matt and Lucas are here, so what they're looking at tonight, it's accurate, right, you guys? Just go like that.
Yeah, with the caveat that nothing is precise, nothing is perfect.
Of course not.
Nothing's perfect.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point.
That's the city motto.
So do we have anything else to discuss on this, or are we going to our next future
me.
agenda items or something?
I think we're on to item number 3, which will close us out quickly. I have no idea what future agenda items. I have no idea what Ojai Playhouse Theater is.
Yeah, so they're proposing some exterior changes, and those are triggering the commission review. So that's being scheduled before this commission. We anticipate that it'll be available and ready to go on the 14th.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Of April, I mean.
Lucas, did they get a roof on the top?
Yes.
Okay, I thought
there was a roof already. However, it was not structural by any stretch of the imagination, given its age.
Okay. Yeah.
So walking on it was almost suspect to a certain degree.
Walking on the roof did not work. Okay.
That's the 260 East Ojai Avenue. Why do I know that?
Oh, that's the Ivy.
Okay, that's right.
That's the old bank building with the vault still in it.
Got it.
That's right. So that's coming up in the future.
Yep.
I think that's interesting, and that will be, their questions will be really relevant because it's a merchant and it's trying to, document a building that's right in the middle of the proposed historic district.
Yeah.
Or the state historic.
The state historic district.
It is.
It's a property owner who is a merchant who's in a building that they're trying to preserve in the middle of the downtown state city proposed, blah, blah.
And I wouldn't go any further than that at this point.
Okay.
No, I wouldn't go any further than that, but I
agree.
just think that, it's this, we keep talking about these hypotheticals and examples, and here it is.
Yeah. I will say we've been working with this applicant for about 2 years. And I would say part of that was COVID. They kind of paused what they were doing for about a year. They just weren't sure if they wanted to move forward, but I think they're back on track here, and we're working with them right now. So just be aware of that. I don't want to go into any details. I can't go into any details yet because it hasn't been placed on an agenda. So
okay. So Lucas, will that be on the next meeting agenda? Yes.
No.
Oh.
That's a pending project. It is
okay.
We're still working through it. Ojai Playhouse Theater is much closer, and that's why it's on for the 14th.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's when they're just so the commission is aware, when they're on pending, we're letting you know that they're in, we're massaging it, we're getting it ready and prepped for this commission.
Okay. Yeah, it was a reminder.
I think that's an important piece. It hasn't reached the level of saying, yes, it's going to be on a future agenda because we have all the pieces to the puzzle.
Okay. Planning report, Lucas?
I really don't have anything this time. Nothing to report. Yeah, nothing to report, at least at this point. I will say this. There is a question mark regarding this Hotel Aurora going to Planning Commission on the 6th of April.
Oh, okay.
And I think you can probably expect that for the 6th. I've been working with the applicants to get everything together for that to move forward. So it's a question mark right now. Talking with them today, I think it all depends on when they get the stuff to me, the additional information and clarification. So
and the staff's review of that information. Nothing is set in stone as to that hearing yet.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
but question mark, I think, is fair.
We'll watch. So okay. Anything else?
That's it at this point.
Okay.
We're working on some stuff behind the scenes, but nothing to report at this point.
Okay, great. Thank you. On commissioner comments, at the last planning commission, Community Development Director Seibert teased the planning commission on telling them on what we decided. He fought off the planning commission who wanted all the details and more. And I knew it was in there, and I looked at the meeting length and I'm like, 2.5 hours. I ain't gonna watch this for 2.5 hours. I bet he did it in like the last 3 minutes. And so I jumped to the last 3 minutes and got it. So I will tell you that after Lucas finished his report, Chair Quillisi said, I just want to make a point. The HPC said that when the Historic Resources report came out, they would schedule a special meeting, and they did what they said. And so he was very complimentary that we did what we had said we would, and, you know, got that organized through Lucas and Mara and Cheryl and everybody else. So nice to hear kudos from another commission. That's all I got. And I think Betsy,
The mayor had to drop off for a conflicting engagement.
Okay, kudos to her for sticking in all of these crazy meetings. And she is always highly complimentary of the HBC hearings. So kudos to everyone. Any other commission okay, so 7:46. Gosh, we're meeting as long as the planning commission. What's with that? Lucas is like gonna go. I'm gonna go to the Parks and Rec. Oh, well, maybe you're not.
I appreciate this. This commission, just like the planning commission, you guys get in the weeds. You want to make sure that you're getting all the facts and you're being very sound about the decisions you're making. So I appreciate that.
Well, and we appreciate, like I said, your support, Mara's support, Cheryl's support, and Sherry's support back there. So again, thank you. And Matt, thank you for that slideshow. It answered all the questions that I had down there, and other things that people have asked for. So whether we want to make a recommendation on the vote, that's another meeting. Not tonight.
Agreed.
Okay.
It'll be part of the coming discussions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else? What?
I said, thank you.
Okay, thanks
Yeah.
everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
We're done.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks all. Good night.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thanks
Bye.
everyone.
Thanks.